Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a good Sunday. Fuck the Packers. Can't even get one thing right. Red Wings are winning. Went to a Red Wings game. That's why I'm in Red Wings gear. I completely forgot that the podcast was at 7 tonight, but hey, happy that the Red Wings are doing better. We are joined again by Detroit Pistons beat reporter Eric Vincent. Eric, man, welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure, man. Absolute pleasure. I'm repping for the Lions today. Again, obviously the Packers can't do their job. Who was it? The Falcons the week before. All these teams can't beat the fraudulent Vikings, so we got to take care of business ourselves. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the Lions take care of the 49ers. I think they will, but hopefully. You never know what team's going to show up. But we're going to get into some Detroit Pistons talk, if you will. I want to kind of get your overall thoughts this week with the Detroit Pistons. Just the games this week. Maybe we can kind of like start on the West Coast trip, because I felt like best brand of Pistons basketball, I would say, since the Blake Griffin year when they went 41-41.
Yeah, you couldn't be more right about that. I actually got a piece coming up on clutchpoints.com. Should be up by tomorrow if you guys want to check that out. I'm super impressed by what they did. Even to the point of the blowout loss yesterday against Denver, it doesn't hurt that bad when you have the 3 games prior go the way that they did. So I wasn't even tripping about that. I'm super impressed with how they've been playing. They've shown that they've had the ability to have a comeback victory like they had in Sacramento. They sustained a lead against the Suns throughout basically the entire game outside the first quarter, and they beat them. And then the Lakers game, which had the lead teetering and tottering back and forth basically the entire game. And what I love the most with these kind of games, the guys that are the most important to the roster are the ones who are delivering. Jaden Ivey with his clutch shot against Sacramento, averaging, I think he had like 18 points in that 4-game stretch. Cade still looking like a superstar, playing his behind off, doing what he needs to do. The average maybe 25, 28 points a game. He was fantastic. And again, these are the guys that you need to lean on. It would be one thing if Beasley just came through with a heater and he was just hot, scoring 30 plus for a week. That would be cool, but that's not necessarily what you want to lean on for a rebuilding franchise. You want the guys that you've invested in for the future to be the ones to carry you in moments like this. So for Cade to be able to step up to LeBron, step up to KD, step up on the road against a Sacramento team that, even though they're, on the downswing now, they are a playoff team with experience, with all-star talent, a championship level coach that kind of got fired in a wild way, but that's another story. And even, again, the Nuggets game ended how it did, but for that first half, they were relatively competitive the whole first half. So it's the third quarter where things got out of control with Jamal Murray and some calls and whatnot, but they've shown that they can depend on some of their future guys that they need to have invested in. So when Ivy has contract talks and when you're asking if Cade is worthy of being an all-star, all you got to do is run the clips and the tape of him schooling Kevin Durant for an entire game, putting LeBron on a highlight reel. Those things you can't undersell for these young guys that are 23 and younger. So yeah, I've been super impressed with what they've done, and Piston fans, you should feel excited about it too.
Yeah, the Phoenix game, man, I looked back at all of these games on the West Coast trip. The Pistons were not favored in any of them on any sports book. They were underdogs going into the game. I was really interested to see the matchup with Cade Cunningham and Kevin Durant, because if you kind of follow both of those players, you know firsthand that Kevin Durant has always kind of extended an olive branch to Cade. That's his big bro. Mm-hmm. And so just to go at Kevin Durant the way he went at him, he had a couple crossovers, just was in his bag the entire night. The Phoenix game I was really impressed with, because when this team is locked in on both ends of the floor, this looks like a team that should be competing for the playoffs, honestly. The Lakers game, I love when we beat the Lakers, Eric. I absolutely love it. You swept the Lakers. Lakers fans were pissed off because Malik Beasley just went on a heater. When we had Pistons Jack on last week, I had told him if Malik Beasley goes off, Lakers fans are just going to be irritated because he didn't do that in
Facts.
LA whatsoever. And, Cade had a really great game again against LeBron. Had a really great highlight where he just kind of kissed it off glass. And I thought those were two games where you have all-star voting coming up. Like Cade Cunningham is in that conversation to be an all-star. We'll get into that in a little bit later. Got a little cameo from the cat. Shout out.
Just always trying to be seen. Get out of here.
The Kings game, man. Like the Kings game, first three quarters, I was like, it's not their night. Malik Beasley goes on a heater. Jaden Ivey with that buzzer beater, the and one. Dude, amazing. The Nuggets game last night, it's just like for the first 22 minutes, I thought they were competitive, but I think they just kind of looked gassed. I don't want to give them excuses, but that's just kind of like what I saw out of them. I loved what I saw out of the bench unit in the fourth quarter, having the Nuggets had a 29-point lead, and they cut it down all the way up to, I think, 7 or 6 points. Mm-hmm. So I think overall, just this West Coast trip was very successful. I'm sure you saw it, man. Sacramento Kings fans are in shambles this week.
Oh, they are not happy. Not at all. I mean, from the past few years, they've been talking some mad trash to the Pistons community, so I can't even give them no kind of grace right now. Y'all deserve it. I'm sorry.
One account in particular, I will shout him out, Kings Muse, said he'd rather not win a championship than be a Piston fan. He doesn't mean that.
No, I saw that too. That was crazy.
He doesn't mean that. I love Pistons Twitter. They went at his ass like crazy. I think that post got more retweets than comments. They've been on his ass for like 2 days. And then Mike Brown gets fired this week, which I don't think he deserved to get fired.
I agree. That was crazy.
I think if you kind of follow the Kings and connect the dots with Rich Paul and Monty McNair and De'Aaron Fox not liking being called out, it was either Fox or trade Fox or keep Mike Brown, and they decided to fire another coach. But the whole firing of Mike Brown, to me, it just didn't sit right with me because he's a good coach.
Especially considering what he said in his postgame. He was very honest. He said, I told them to guard the three. A layup doesn't hurt us. They can't take the lead with a layup. So whatever they get in the paint is fine. I told them to do that. So not only does De'Aaron Fox let up a three, granted, I was with Kings fans and other NBA viewers. I don't like the foul baiting where you jump into somebody, but when you watch the replays, they're talking about, I think it was the broadcast that was saying, oh, the challenge, they got to review it. When you look at the review, Fox is grabbing Jaden's arm with two hands. So you lose your argument out of that immediately. So he put it out there. I told them what the game plan was. I told them to be disciplined on defense, and they didn't do it. So, yeah, I felt pretty bad for Mike Brown. He's a championship-level coach. He has more than enough experience, and his players failed him in that moment. That was not on him in any way, shape, or form. That was on them.
Yeah, I mean, firing a coach that got you to the playoffs, the first time in, I think, 16 years. Yep. I think he was the third winningest coach in Sacramento Kings history, and you let that guy go because he called out the star player. I don't get it. I don't like it. I'm not a Kings fan, but just as a basketball fan, like, can you imagine if like JB called out Cade and then Gore's just like, yeah, you're fired? Like that would be wild. That would be absolutely wild. But I mean, their problem, not ours. It's payback for playing that clip of the San Francisco 49ers beating the Lions last year. Karma's a bitch.
I forgot they did. Oh, never. Nah, I definitely don't feel bad. I totally forgot when the interception jumped off his face mask. They did play that before the game. Okay, never mind. Y'all deserve it. No issue with it at all. Shout out to my screw. Let's go.
One pride up in here.
Let's go.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for Kings fans whatsoever.
Sorry, y'all got to go through it.
No, I mean, hey, man, like, I think James Edwards started the beef saying like Sacramento is like the most boring NBA city to travel in. I think that's when it started 4 years ago. And then they were coming at Pistons fans for saying Marvin Bagley was doing better in Detroit, which it's like the fakest like rivalry they want with Detroit. And I don't understand it. It's just like,
honestly, bro.
Like, I was like, come on, man. Like, what the hell?
Your Muse page, so I'd rather not be a Piston fan who's won 3 championships where y'all ain't won nothing at this point. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Keep up with that mediocrity.
I mean, if you keep receipts, like everything was well deserved. Jaden Ivey was always going to hit that shot. Jaden Ivey plays the Kings really, really well, and
Loves
they
playing
did.
against the Kings. Yes.
Yeah. Keegan Murray, who? Yeah, Jaden Ivey has some games against Sacramento. Every time he plays Sacramento, he sees red, like straight up. He just that game winner was going to happen. I think he knew it too.
100%. I was so happy. If anybody that needed to hit that shot, it was Jaden Ivey. Couldn't happen for a better player, really.
Honestly, I wanted to get into. I'm sure you saw Bobby Marks. He was talking about the Detroit Pistons, and we're fastly approaching the trade deadline. I did put an article from an ESPN Plus, just kind of like a screenshot. I wanted to read it for people that are watching live or listen later on the audio side. I guess Bobby Marks asked team executives for both conferences to give me one team that controls the February 6th deadline. The answer might surprise you. The Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are a team to watch, not because of it's in the market for a Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler, or Chicago Bulls wing Zach LaVine, but because of its $14 million in salary cap, with nearly a third of the league not allowed to take back additional salary in a trade because of the apron restrictions. Detroit is in an ideal position to act as a third team taking back contracts, but with the caveat that draft picks are attached. So I did want to kind of put that on the screen. I did want to talk about it with you. I feel like they're in a very, very unique situation, and this has been very calculated by Trajan Langdon. Like his first press conference, I remember a reporter asking him, like, what's the goal with all this cap space? And he said, getting draft capital, getting assets. So I think a lot of Pistons fans, they're going to zero on in the Butler, the Ingram, the Zach LaVine. But what do you kind of make of this from a ESPN insider, a front office insider, Bobby Marks saying like a lot of teams are going to ask the Pistons to possibly, help them get out of the salary cap hell?
Yeah, I think it's a helpful position for him for sure. I think looking at the teams that are trying to be in sell now mode, whether it's, the Kings themselves, they could be in a position where they're trying to get rid of some guys. Brooklyn's been making a lot of moves. I just saw another report that Cam Johnson could be on the way. I've been vocal about how much I like him and the thought of him with the Pistons. But they need to be active. Again, it's a little constricting considering how many picks they have available to kind of issue around, but they do have expiring contracts. They do have guys that they could float around in trade conversations. And that does put them in a very advantageous situation because you have Cade Cunningham who's ascending at a star level. You can only sit and wait and just kind of figure things out, and we'll see where things go with these pieces, and we'll take our time. I understand them wanting to do that and not wanting to skip steps of development. That all makes sense. But you don't really have a lot of time to waste right now when your window of winning just opened. This Eastern Conference is not what it was last year. It's not as strong from outside of Boston and Cleveland. Basically, everybody else underneath that is in a position where they can fall. Orlando's injured as can be. Atlanta's kind of fluky. I'm not really into them. I said the Pacers were going to take a step back. They are. Brooklyn got off to a hot start. They're coming back down to earth. They need to kind of put their foot on the gas at this point. That doesn't necessarily mean, like you said, they don't need to be in a position where they're calling about guys like a Jimmy Butler. I think I saw that conversation in like a lot of Facebook groups and stuff. Like those aren't the names that they need to be inquiring about. If you can get a guy that's just below that star level, I think that's suitable enough. When you already have Cade, who I think is established as a star, and in moments, Ivy has shown that he can be a star with his potential. He's not there yet, but I don't think he's far away with how he's been playing. So considering how well those two guys are playing, you don't need to necessarily be star hunting at the moment. You just need to find the most complementary pieces that can make them the best that they can be. So I expect them to be extremely active before the deadline. What they do is going to be very interesting, though. I'm definitely tuned in to find out.
I know we talked about it this past month when we had that Detroit Pistons roundtable. We talked about this really thoroughly.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of Pistons fans, like I see it every day, like the Pistons need to get an elite scorer. They need to get, another star next to Cade Cunningham. Like, our window's now. Like, Cade has shown us that he's that guy. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Eastern Conference for years to come, which I agree with them. But I think the Pistons are in a very unique situation because you have contracts extensions that are going to be eligible for this summer. Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren.
Mm-hmm.
Cade's Supermax goes into effect next season. You have to be so careful and you have to be sure the next move you're making is not a short-term move. You
Right.
have to make sure that this can be a long-term move where it doesn't derail what you can do in the future.
Right.
That's why when you talk about Zach LaVine, I think the player, the bucket getter that he is, makes a whole lot of sense on paper, but the contract is still really big, and it would kind of handicap them in terms of making bigger moves in the future. I know his contract's only about 3 more years or so, but I think it's a B- player. I think it's a player that complements them. I know you mentioned Cam Johnson. I was on the Cam Johnson train like 2 years ago when Troy was still here.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he made so much sense, and you kind of look at the year he's having. He's having like a career year, just shooting the basketball. I think it's one of those B- players that could really complement not only Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, but the rookies on this team, like Ron Holland as well. I think this trade deadline is going to be very active. Like, we just had a trade today. Like, D'Lo's going back to the Lakers for Dorian Finney-Smith in 3 seconds. Like, I don't think you're going to see too many first-round picks getting dished out, especially in this year's draft. I think a lot of teams are just valuing second-round picks this year.
Mm-hmm.
That 3 seconds for a player of Dorian Finney-Smith's stature, I think, was a steal for the Lakers. And I think the Pistons having that $14 million in cap space, if I'm a Pistons fan, I'm looking at the teams that are kind of in cap space hell right now. Go look at the bigger contracts they have. Trajan has made it known, like, hey, we'll help you out, but you got to give me some draft picks to even take on that contract, which I wish Troy would have done that like 4 years ago. I really wish he would have just taken on a bad contract for some draft picks. But hey, we're doing it now. If you can get a rotational player that upgrades his roster to, keep pushing you into the playoff picture, I'm here for it. But I just want to kind of caution Pistons fans. I don't think you're going to go star hunting right now.
No, I don't expect it at all. Again, I think, like you said, they're basically just kind of waiting for teams to kind of, wave that white flag to say, okay, we're ready to, have that conversation that maybe they didn't want to have last season, maybe a couple years ago when they were still trying to figure positions out and, seeing what the potential of their guys were. Teams weren't picking up the phone for the Pistons. But now at this point, like you said, where guys are established and you're kind of seeing some things fall into place. You're understanding that this backcourt is something that you can invest in full time and, for the long haul. There's a lot of questions in the front court about what fits and what doesn't. But again, there's also contracts and scenarios where those guys can be included in, discussions as well. So yeah, it's a little, I don't want to say it's confusing, but it's just a little tight in what they can do. They'll probably, like you said, be that third team. If a star is moved, they'll probably be that other team that, takes on the backload of, a couple loose picks and maybe a rotational guy, which is okay because a lot of the guys that they have right now in their rotation are guys that they can upgrade from right now. That's not to say that they haven't been helpful in other ways, but with what this team needs right now, they need some guys that, aren't just these short-term fixes, like kind of like how the Lions had, for the past several seasons. Like, they had guys like Jamal Williams who they'll bring in for a year, bring in a DJ Shark for a year. And then, when they find in the pieces or draft the right pieces that make sense, you can move on from those kind of names. The Pistons are kind of opening that window now, which is a little bit ahead of the timeline we thought. A lot of people didn't think they'd be 14-18 at this point, already tying last season's winning record. So knowing that they found some success, that they've expedited their processing right now, I think now is the time for Trajan Langdon to be a little bit more aggressive than he thought. I don't know if he maybe thought they might be a little slower up to this point, but knowing where things are now, they don't really have much of a choice. You got to find something that fits these pieces a little bit more long-term than what they have right now.
Yeah, because you don't want to waste the seasons that Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey are having, because I don't think that can go understated.
Mm-mm.
Like, I think a lot of people this summer were willing to trade Jaden Ivey and just give up on him, because I think, not that we didn't believe in him as a player, but we had a coach come in here and basically say he's not a starter. And I think as fans, sometimes when we watch these games, we're like, well, maybe that coach was right. Maybe, Jaden Ivey isn't what we think he is, but that wasn't the case. I think he's having a career year. Like last night, I loved his pace. Since he's come back from injury, I think he's putting up 18 and a half points, shooting 50% from the field and 50% from three. Who's to say Jaden Ivey can't be your Zach LaVine in a couple of years? Like, who's to say he can't be that guy?
Why
I think they're very similar, personally.
I'm with you. Someone threw out an awesome name for a comp. Someone said if he's at the level of like a Victor Oladipo, that's a win. He doesn't have to be whatever Zach LaVine was. If he's not an all-star 3 different times, like remember he had the big checklist of things that he wanted to accomplish in his career. If he does or does not get to those points, it doesn't matter. He doesn't have to be a superstar to validate a number 5 pick. He needs to fit with Cade. He needs to bring winning to this team, and he needs to put in a level of effort that you don't have to question. That's the thing that we're seeing. That's the difference between him and Duren right now. The potential is there, but nobody is questioning Ivey's effort on any possession that he plays. He plays his heart out. He's very selfless. He's not forcing a whole lot. He's picking his spots wisely. And like I said, he's giving the effort defensively, and even on like possessions where you don't expect him to make an impact. Like I talked about this last season, he was very active as an offensive rebounder for some reason, because I don't know if that was like scripted for him to work on, but he's doing really well at that right now still. He'll get around the glass, tip the ball back for an extra shot for one of the shooters. He's improved everywhere, I believe, in his game. He's a really good passer. When he puts his head down, he's getting a little bit better as a finisher. Could be a little bit more consistent in that, but again, the improvement is there and the fit is there. It's not taken away from what Cade does. He does a good job when he's staggered around with the other guys in the lineup, when he's playing with the bench unit, when he's finding other shooters that are off the bench. Like he's doing a good job, not just, fending for himself, but complimenting and raising the bar for other guys around him as well. It really made me upset to see people give up on Ivey, because even during the season last year when the team was garbage, he still had some impressive games where you looked and said, oh, wait, we might have something. Sacramento last season where he played against the Pacers. I think he had a really good game against the Clippers last year. Like there was some really good showings, whether Cade was on the floor or not, where he showed that he could be a focal point type of player. So no, Ivey has been showing his value and he's been showing his improvement since last season, not just this season. He's been really good since last season in some spurts. And I'm glad it's coming to fruition now and that people are seeing it. Again, I tweeted immediately after that game winner, no more trade talks around his name. I don't want to hear it. If you're not getting Devin Booker, who's a superstar and young and in a contract that makes sense or whatever, you should not be talking about Jaden Ivey as a trade piece right now. It doesn't make any sense for this team based on what they have.
Yeah, I mean, we have some comments in the YouTube chat right now with like the comps. Like Chili Demon says Ivey's a early D'Angelo Russell. I can kind of see that in his earlier days, the way he shoots the basketball. Someone dropped Mr. Ray. Man, I have not heard that name in a while. He said, I'm thinking of Leonardo Barbosa. That is a throwback name. I like it.
D'Angelo, okay.
It's It's a realistic comp. Oladipo is a physical beast. On top of that, being great end-to-end speed demon. I think when I look at Oladipo and Ivey, I think it's more from an athletic standpoint. They're very similar athletically.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Ivey like reaches his potential, like Indiana, Victor Oladipo would be just like at the top of my wish list. As a Piston fan, because that was a guy that was, scoring 30 points a game before he did get injured. And there was nothing you could do to stay in front of him. But I'm glad to see, Ivey's bounce back, had a good game. But I just wouldn't really expect too much if I'm Pistons fans. Like not right now. I think in the future, maybe if you do want to go star hunting, have a couple more assets, a couple more draft picks, maybe Trajan, okay, we're going to make a move now. I just don't think they're ready yet. You have to see what you have. And Trajan just got here. He doesn't know what he has in Cade Cunningham or
Right.
Jaden Ivey. And I think every game watching, he's learning, which is a good thing for a brand new president of basketball operations for this team. But did want to talk about it for a couple of minutes because I know, Pistons fans were really excited when they saw the Butler and the Ingram and the Levine. Like their eyes got all huge saying, oh, we're getting that superstar. Like, hold on, pump the brakes, pump them a little bit. Like if you want those guys, you're probably trading away all of your young core.
Exactly.
Because you can't trade your draft picks because they're still tied up with the Isaiah Stewart trade. And that transitions perfectly into our next topic. So former Detroit Pistons beat reporter James Edwards, I'm sure you saw this, said that he could see the Detroit Pistons possibly trying to trade Isaiah Stewart to the New York Knicks in exchange for Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achua. So I want to get your thoughts on this because when I saw this, I was just like, I love James. I've had him on this podcast multiple times. His love for Stu, I respect it. Like he's covering a completely different team, and he still wants Isaiah Stewart. He still wants to cover Isaiah Stewart as a basketball player. But what do you kind of think of this? Due to the Knicks for Mitchell Robinson, who's injured right now, and Precious Achua, who's a rim runner but doesn't really play a whole lot of defense.
If, as you said, if it's a player that has to be moved in order to facilitate some kind of roster movement, I wouldn't be surprised if Stu was one of those names. I just don't think the Knicks would be the area to, fish him around. Like you said, Mitchell Robinson, it seems like he's hurt a lot. He's a good player. I like his defensive, prowess that he brings to that team, but you've already seen they added somebody else. They're just fine. I don't think that moves the needle enough for what they need. Great. I think, it helps that he's, obviously taller, gives a little bit more productivity and upside, having a lob threat for Cade and a bit of a better rim protector. But I don't know if that's probably the best fit or option for him to go to. I don't see the Knicks as the team that they make that call for. But again, if Stu is the guy that they do kind of fish around in those discussions, I can see it. I absolutely could. He's still granted. He's been spectacular defensively. He's still very limited offensively. He doesn't really give the consistency, even though I think he's a little bit more improved as a finisher, at the hoop. He's been pretty active as a rebounder. But still he is kind of active, he's a little more capped in terms of what his potential is offensively. And something else that bothers me, he can be a bit of a knucklehead sometimes. Like we saw earlier this season where, we got a technical foul. I forgot what game it was, but Cade had to come get in his ear. Like, why are you doing that? Like, for what? So it's still some things where I know he's revered as like the heart and soul of this team. He still does make some mistakes though, and he still does have some limitations to his game that I think makes him a little bit more expendable than people might want to say. Yes, I know he's one of the first pieces of this rebuild in terms of the draft with Killian and Sadiq. There was an all-rookie guy. We've known what his highlights are, his, star moments and whatnot of wanting to fight. And even last night against Russell Westbrook, getting tied up with him. We love those moments, but at the same time, you got to have a little bit more than that. And if you're going to be that kind of a chippy guy, like it's one thing where if you're going to be a guy that's, edgy, you have to be, producing enough to the point where it's tolerable, like a Rasheed Wallace. You could have Sheed set, the record for technical fouls, but if he's giving you 20 and 10, you shut up and deal with it because he's that talented. I don't know if Beef Stew has that much leniency with what he gives you. So if he is one of those mentioned names, I mean, we've heard it since last season of teams like the Celtics, the Pelicans, now the Knicks. I think I'm forgetting one more team, but a lot of teams have inquired about having an enforcer like him. And he does have that value, but I think for the Pistons, he can be a little bit limiting for what they truly need. So his name will definitely be interesting as these discussions go along through the trade deadline.
Yeah, I feel like every trade deadline season, Isaiah Stewart's name comes up from one publication or another. I think if you were to trade Stu, this isn't a trade offer I'm even entertaining.
I feel you.
And I feel like the Knicks haven't recovered since losing Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency.
Right.
I happen to follow like a lot of New York Knicks people. Did a couple Twitter Spaces with the Knicks community, and I think one thing with them is that they just cannot find a consistent backup center.
Right.
I don't really think Isaiah Stewart for a Mitch Robb, who when he's healthy, when he plays, he's great, but that's the problem. He just can't stay healthy. And at the end of the day, do the Pistons really want to trade for a project that's always injured? I don't think so.
Right.
They're way past taking on reclamation projects.
Yep.
Precious Achiuwa, I've liked. I liked him when he was in Toronto. I liked him when he was at the University of Memphis. I was telling people he's the better of the big men at Memphis over James Wiseman. Rim runner. Defensively at times, he's not the best, but I think if you were to try to trade Isaiah Stewart, you could probably get some draft capital, because I know a lot of contenders like him. They like what he brings. Defensively, I think it shouldn't go unstated. He's been one of the best defenders this season coming off the bench, especially his shot blocking and his rim protection. I think has improved vastly from last season to this season. Stuff like last night, getting into it with Russell Westbrook. As a fan, like you want him to have those moments, but be smart enough to walk away so you don't get the technical fouls.
Right.
And you're hurting the team. Like, I thought Russell Westbrook last night really changed the whole tempo of that third quarter, because he got into it with Cade, and then he got into it with Asar Thompson and Stu, and the Pistons didn't really know how to deal with it. And Stu wears his, emotions on his sleeve, and I love that at times. But there are certain situations where, like you mentioned, Cade had to get him this year against Washington because he wouldn't stop talking, telling him like, "Hey, focus, lock in, like stop." At the end of the day, if they do decide to move on from Stu, I expect it to be a contender or maybe a bubble team trying to push into the playoffs that need more center help. But I don't think a trade like this with the New York Knicks makes a whole lot of sense. Chuck Brewer had a great comment saying, "When are we going to stop helping the Knicks build their basketball team?" Honestly, man, I'm over it. Like, Jalen Brunson would not be a Knick without the Pistons. Like, we took on like no knees Kimball Walker, Nerlens Noel, which I don't know if I've ever told you Nerlens Noel story I heard from a coach. I'll have to tell you after the podcast is over. It's actually kind of funny.
Okay.
And then Alec Burks. Like, we've done the Knicks so many favors. Even last year, like, dumping Bojan and Alec Burks when we probably could have traded Bojan last year. Like, we've done the Knicks so many favors of, helping them build teams, helping them get players. At the end of the day, I think Trajan isn't going to do the Knicks any more favors. I just think he doesn't have the same relationships that Troy Weaver had with Leon Rose. I don't even know if Trajan even knows Leon Rose like Troy did, because I know Troy had a really, really good personal relationship with them because they've known each other for years. But no, I'm rambling a little bit. I don't think they trade Stu to the Knicks. I just don't see it. I don't think a trade package like this even moves a needle. There's not even a draft pick attached either. It's just like,
right.
What are we doing?
Yeah, no, I can't see that being the case. But yeah, I don't want fans being too tied to it either. Again, I don't want to. I'll be a hater. I don't care. I didn't care for the whole LeBron LA thing that he did. Like, bro, you ran over a bunch of. You didn't go fight a Laker to get to LeBron. You ran over LCA employees to get to him, bro. That's not tough to me. Like, I didn't buy into all the hype that was. Like, I thought that was kind of ridiculous. And on a point that you made yesterday, actually, during the game, another reason that I wouldn't mind if he was floated in that trade, they got to find a way to get Paul Reed more minutes. They need to play him a lot more. Granted, he's not the defender that Stu is, but offensively, it's night and day. It's not even close between those two. His jumper may look how it looks, but he has range. He's hit threes. He can create his own shot. He has a mid-range that he can go to, and he's been really active defensively too in creating turnovers, blitzing on double teams. He's done a really good job of providing some energy off the bench for the Pistons. They have a lot of guys, like from whether it's Ron Holland, B-Ball Paul, Asar, who's playing really good right now. Like, they've done a really good job at getting some energy out of those guys. Even Sasser here and there sometimes has been playing pretty good. So I really would like to see them find a way to get Paul some more minutes. And if that has to come at the expense of Stu, I don't think that's really such a bad thing because he's giving you production on both ends of the floor that Stu's not always giving you. Now, granted, yes, you're going to take a drop defensively, but as they get a little bit more experience, having a SAR in the rotation now, it makes that a little bit more easier to digest. So I really want to see them kind of lean into that change because Paul has been playing his behind off since he's come back, since getting cut off.
Yeah, ever since he got cut and then they gave him a minimum, he's been playing like a max player. Right. Like I just was looking at the numbers. He had like 4 steals one game. Like I love the way he blitzes on the perimeter. I love the gambles. I love that he's willing to just go out there. Like the flop he had on Jokic yesterday was absolutely hilarious. Like Jokic was like actually pissed off that he flopped and got the call. And I don't know if he caught it towards the end of the game. Like Paul Reed, like kind of like gave him like the little smile. It's like, I flopped.
Yeah. Even the Anthony Davis, get Anthony Davis a technical foul.
Yeah, that was my problem. I made a video earlier this week saying like once Stu comes back, like I hope he's just not a third string center again because he's played so well. Like I don't know how you don't reward that good play throughout this West Coast trip. Like I like JD. I want to give a shout out to Bryce Simon because he had this idea at his podcast. He said, start Paul Reed and have Isaiah Stewart off the bench for a couple of games and watch Dern. Just let Dern watch them play. Like I'm not opposed to that. I think that's actually a good idea. Like because I like JD, but defensively he's just not locked in all the time. The 2 lane violations last night, man. I was like, what are we doing, man? Like just the focus and attention to detail, the little stuff, it's not there. I think possibly having, JD just watch from the bench for a couple of games just to watch Paul Reed and Isaiah Stewart play might do him some good personally. And I'm with Bryce on that. I wouldn't be opposed to the idea.
Yeah, I think JB's I think he's bold enough to maybe try it. Especially considering where Duren is. He's not even like his rebounding numbers, like that's not the same as it was like just a year ago. He was for a few weeks, he was the number 1 rebounder in basketball. Now, granted, he don't have to be that now, but that production is not the same. He's always like a half second late in his shot contesting. And then his offensive game is completely predicated on what the guards can give him. If they can't create space and lob him an easy dunk, he's not really doing a whole lot outside of other screens to, get other guys open for shots on the perimeter. And he's been a little bit better at not turning those into fouls, which I'll give him credit for. But yeah, he's slowing down a lot for what this team needs right now. Granted, I like having a lob threat for a guy like Cade who seems to throw an impressive lob or two every single game now. But for everything else that they need, he's taking a step back. And yeah, it really would be a bad sign to see Paul Reed play this well and then kind of just, step back to, okay, you're just riding the pine for now because, you don't want to do the Monty Williams and, play everybody off the bench in extended minutes, but you can't ignore what you've been seeing from Paul. He's been playing fantastic. That front court badly needs some production consistently, and I think he's a guy that can help provide that on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah, I mean, he had a mid-range shot. I know he has the ability to stretch the floor. I know the shot's a little unconventional, but it does go in. I like his passing, his screen setting. He's just played so well this season in a very short role. And if you look at his per 36 numbers, they're absolutely off the chart just because he plays in short spurts. But honestly, JB and the coaching staff might have, some decisions to make, especially with the starting lineup change. Because if you look at the starting lineup, Eric, they have like one of the worst net ratings in the entire NBA. It's just like if you're really serious about making the playoffs, like that is something that you have to consider because you can't just, keep having these guys go out and just, give up 40-point quarters and expect to win.
Yeah, that's not gonna cut it, man. It's really not. They need some kind of consistency through the forwards, whether it's Duren too as the center. Something's just not clicking out of those guys right now. And we thought that maybe with the help of Asar or watching Beef Stew and, even through fourth quarters where he's not, in the closing lineups, that's not really helping him. We're not seeing the changes elevate his play. We're not seeing, him having to sit for stretches, like bring any kind of inspiration for him. It's just kind of been the same thing all season. And I don't think that's going to fly for too long. I don't think he'll be traded. I don't think he'll be moved, but a statement does have to be made at some point that they're looking to find something different to get this group going. And he hasn't been that guy, unfortunately, for the Pistons.
Yeah, it's a shame. I don't really know what to pinpoint with Duren because I thought his rookie year, he showed effort. And I don't know if I've had this conversation with you. I think he regressed a lot with Monty because Monty allowed him to just develop really, really bad habits defensively.
Yeah.
No accountability, no coaching him up, just kind of doing like whatever he wanted. And it's leaked over to this season. And you're seeing the defensive lapses where he's not closing out on the perimeter. He's not communicating on, backdoor cuts. But there are games this season where he's blocking shots, he's locking in. I don't think he's a lost cause, but I think maybe, losing his starting spot could be the right move for this coaching staff long term, because you don't have to extend him going into the summer. You can just let him hit restricted free agency and, kind of make a decision long term for him on this basketball team. I still think he's a player that Cade Cunningham absolutely loves to play with. Catching lobs, rim running, setting screens. You obviously want that type of player with Cade Cunningham, but at the end of the day, he has to do better.
100%. Even I remember his passing being something that was highly touted. That's not looking good either. Like, he's taking a lot of risky passes. I like that you brought up the Monty Williams thing, because we know he was super high on him. He said he has the ability to be a top 10 player. We're not seeing that right now. And he needs to get back to a point of focusing in on the fundamentals and the basics of his game, because he's trying a lot of skip passes that aren't getting completed. Even like handoffs to, the wings coming across to get the ball, and that ends up being a turnover out of bounds. Just things like that aren't acceptable. And then even in live action turnovers where he's jogging back up the floor, or he's late on a rotation and he doesn't slide over quick enough to contest a shot. Granted, he doesn't need to be Ben Wallace. I know we had a lot of Dwight Howard comparisons because of his athleticism and his body and his age as well, but it's not putting together right now. It's really not. Yeah. Hopefully JB has an idea. I mean, he's tried different things, like playing Tobias at the 5, playing Isaiah Stewart in extended minutes, playing him in closing stretches during a game. Something has to give, but unfortunately, we're just not seeing that right now from Duren to be the player that this team needs him to be.
Yeah, I don't want to rag on him too hard. I think that, he just turned 21.
Right.
I'm not saying the sky is falling, but the defense does need to improve. Overall, I think a starting center position, whether that's Stu or Paul Reed, if they want to win more basketball games, should at least be a discussion with this coaching staff. But I'll just leave it at that. Before we do get into our next topic, we're going to be talking about Cade Cunningham and should he be an all-star this season. We have to hear from our sponsors from the Draft Kings Sportsbook. And we will be right back after this quick message, you guys. You guys, I have to tell you about today's sponsor for this podcast, Draft Kings. It's the most wonderful time of year for getting in on all of the hoops, football, and hockey action at Draft Kings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football, college basketball, the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL almost 24/7. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code Pistons Talk. That's code Pistons Talk for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5, you guys. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling. Okay, we are back right after that quick commercial break from DraftKings Sportsbook. Appreciate them sponsoring today's podcast. Eric, I know we've talked about Cade Cunningham and his potential, and could he be an all-star this season? So that's what I want to ask you. I know you've been very, very vocal on him as a player. And we even had Isaiah Thomas say yesterday that if he's not a starter in the All-Star game, it's at the service of the NBA. So, what are your thoughts on Cade Cunningham making his first All-Star game this season? And do you think he could possibly be a starter?
I don't think that's a crazy conversation at this point. I tweeted before the West Coast swing, and I didn't get a lot of hate. I got a little pushback, but I think some people came along to it. I made the argument that Cade has been the third best point guard in the NBA. I truly believe that. Outside of SGA and Luka, who just got hurt, unfortunately, he's going to be out for a long bit of time. I don't think it's a lot of Eastern Conference guards on both sides of the ball that are playing better than Cade Cunningham. I genuinely don't believe that. The record speaks for itself. I think he's put himself in a valiant enough position where you can make that argument now that they're in a a playoff push race right now based on their record. They're not the laughing stock of the NBA anymore, and they've been competitive relatively every game of the season. And when you look at how Cade has been playing, the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, he's second in assists. He's top 20 in scoring. He's dominating with triple doubles. And there's no guard in the Eastern Conference that's a better defender than him. Nobody. Brunson's not a better defender than him. Lillard's not a better defender than him. Trae Young, I don't care what name you want to throw out. They haven't been better in a two-way aspect than Cade, especially considering the supporting cast around him. When you look at the guys that he's playing with, outside of maybe Trae Young, who I don't think has another star, he has a lot of other talent around him, but he doesn't have another star around him next to him. All the other guys that he's playing against or he's playing with, like Brunson, has two other stars and some of the best rotational pieces in the NBA next to him. Damian Lillard gets to play with Giannis. LaMelo probably doesn't have the best supporting cast either, but he hasn't really been the playmaker or defender that Cade has been either. And if we're also going back to team success, the Hornets ain't playing that well as a team. So yeah, he may be averaging 30, but is that really doing much for them right now? Now, granted, I'm not one of those people that's going to say, oh, well, he's, they're losing, so he's the 20th best point guard. Like, I'm not doing that. I think that's ridiculous. And the media members who do that, y'all got to stop. So I think Cade honestly has been the third best point guard in the NBA. If he's not a starter, it's not the worst thing, but I don't even think it should be a discussion of whether or not he should be on that team right now. He's been unbelievable in all aspects. He's rebounding, giving assistance in areas where we weren't expecting. I didn't expect him to be averaging close to 8 boards a game. Granted, when you have Stewart, when you have Duren, when you had a SAR, like when you had these energy guys and these big bodies that are, supposed to be, great at rebounding, even Tobias, so sometimes he can be a pretty good rebounder. So I didn't expect Cade to be as active this year on the glass as he has been. So, considering that, his playmaking, and again, the playmaking where his number 2 star number 2 player next to him is not really solidified yet. Some nights it's Ivy, some nights it's Malik Beasley, who was a cast-off, and he's now being reinvented and, getting that rejuvenation in Detroit. So considering all of that, his degree of difficulty, his talent, his production, stepping into with his third coach in his 4th season, I think all of that has to be considered. I don't think, Brunson or Lillard averaging more points, and it's not really even that much of a difference. I don't think that's enough to clear them and say they've been playing better than Cade Cunningham. I just don't think so.
Yeah, I think if you're just talking about point guards, you could definitely have a debate that he's been one of the best point guards in the Eastern Conference. Benjamin Foe has a good question. He's like, it doesn't matter though, right? It's guards, not point guards, and shooting guards as far as voting. I believe you are correct in terms of the backcourt. I could be wrong. I don't have the voting pulled up in front of me, but I think what he's done this year, and especially having games, good games against Kevin Durant, LeBron James, he went toe to toe with Nikola Jokic for the first half of that game. He's put on really good performances. I mean, he beat Trae Young, he outperformed Jalen Brunson. I think he will be an all-star. Now, starter, I think that's where you have debates. The great Isaiah Thomas, who we're probably going to talk about in the next topic, said that it would be a disservice if Cade or Trae Young were not starters. I mean, you look at Trae Young, just assisting the basketball this season, it's been incredible. 12 assists per game is like some John Stockton type shit. Like it's crazy. But overall throughout the season, Trae Young has really struggled to shoot the basketball. I mean, I know you had said you don't really know, like, outside of like Trae Young, who do they really have? I mean, like, they have like Jalen Johnson, like an aging Clint Capella, like nothing crazy. But the Hawks are still kind of a playoff team. They're kind of just like kind of flirting with like that 7-8 seed. They're doing well, but the Pistons are doing well too. They're sitting in the 10 seed. They have 14 wins, and I think if Cade Cunningham wants to be an All-Star this season, this is how it's been for Detroit Pistons. Before Cade, you have to win. You have to win basketball games. You can't go into, the All-Star break being 10 games under 500 and expecting to be an All-Star this season. Even if you do put up good numbers, the way the media is, especially with markets like Detroit, you have to win. Even, Blake Griffin's All-NBA year when he was a third-team All-NBA, they were 26-30 before the All-Star break, 4 games under 500. And I know fans will put a graphic of Cade stats and Blake stats. They're pretty damn similar.
Yep.
Cade is having just a phenomenal year. I think he will make the All-Star team. I think having, great performances against the stars of the NBA just helps his All-Star candidacy. I don't know if he'll make a starter though, because I feel like if he was an All-Star starter, he'd have to just go crazy. The Pistons would have to be a couple games over 500, and the national people, not so much like people like me and you that vote for these things, but I think the national people would really have to see him just like go out and just dominate.
Yeah, that's been the benefit of doing what he's been doing in terms of this past week, because he didn't just outperform. Like, I know KD had a 40 ball, but like the Pistons won, and a lot of Cade's production came when Kevin Durant was guarding him. Like, he was isolating him, posting him up and flipping up a hook shot with his left hand, taking LeBron where he's first crossing over Austin Reeves and then hitting that floater. I think Cade is checking off every box that's getting him a lot more of that national attention that you were talking about. And even prior to that, I mean, also not just winning, but also clutch moments as well. I think that gets a lot of people's attention. That gets those, reels on SportsCenter. It gets those conversations twirling. And we've seen that from him. He's had the game winner against, the Hawks, the game-winning layup against the Heat. He had the lob to Duren to tie the game up, where they then had the free throw after that. Like, he's checking all these boxes. And a lot of these wins and these productions that they've seen are because of him. A lot of these other teams, like, again, sometimes you could have a night where Brunson is giving you maybe just 15 a game and maybe he's at like 6 points because, Cat is going off for 30. Or we just saw Mikal Bridges go for 40. Same thing with Giannis, in Milwaukee. Like, there are nights where maybe Dame doesn't have to be the guy because Giannis is leading the league in scoring right now. So there's things that Cade is doing that I'm hoping – the league and the national media is paying attention to and say, you know what? He doesn't have what everybody else has had. He's, reviving this franchise in a way that we didn't even expect to see. And I don't think that can be overlooked at this point. I think he's checking off all the boxes that they've asked for. And again, since the wins are now there, they're not just outside of the play-in race. If that was the case, it would be a much tougher discussion. It would probably be where he would get that same rookie of the year treatment of, oh, well, you're putting up these stats, but what is it getting you? They're in that race now, and the East is not getting much stronger from this point. So if they can build some runs, probably go on another 3-4 game stretch where, they're, beating up on, contending teams, because that's, I think, worth talking about as well. They're not just playing the Hornets every night. They're not just playing the Wizards, no disrespect to them, but they're beating teams that are playoff caliber or championship caliber on the road. Like, that has to count for something. So, no, Cade, I think if he continues at this pace, it should be a no-brainer that he's an all-star. starter is not a big deal. I don't really care if he is a starter or not, but he should absolutely be wearing that jersey and be represented out there too. Malik Beasley should be in the 3-point shootout as well. Make sure you get that propaganda going. But yes, we should see at least 2 Pistons represented on All-Star Weekend coming in February.
Yeah, shout out to Threesley. He definitely deserves it. He's gonna shatter Sadiq. He's gonna shatter Sadiq Bey's record.
No question.
It's kind of wild when you talk about Pistons draft picks, and Sadiq Bey holds the all-time 3-point record in a single season, and he's on the Wizards. And it's just like, what happened? What happened to Sadiq Bey? Like, someone asked me, like, where is he? I was like, he's in Washington. He's like, does he play? I was like, no, he's injured. Like, dude, like, what happened with him? I said, I have no idea. But kind of to wrap this up, I think Cade has a really good shot to make his first All-Star team. The Pistons just have to keep their foot on the gas. I mean, you ended December 5-5, playing 500 basketball, and if you looked at their schedule in December, they had to play the Celtics twice, the Heat, and they went on that West Coast trip. Ended the West Coast trip 3-1. So I think the team is headed in the right direction, and it will help Cade Cunningham in terms of like trying to get those All-Star votes. And make sure you guys, if you are watching, you got over 500 people in here right now. Like, make sure you guys are voting for Cade Cunningham every day, because I think he deserves it. I don't know about you, man, but I've just been so impressed with just the way he's developed. And like not saying like the players that we have are, superstars. Like, they're good role players, and he's almost averaging 10 assists a night. Like, what happens when he has a superstar next to him? So like 10, 12, like, you never really know.
That can't be undersold with him. Like, we're just seeing a different level of his production. Like, I even took the clip against the Kings where he takes the jab step and then shoots a 3, and then before the ball even goes in, he's screaming and backtrotting down the court. Like, this is the same guy where everyone was questioning if he's even going to be a above average 3-point shooter. Now he's hunting his shot out. Sometimes he can get a little bit too addicted to it, but on the nights that it's going, you just see his game take up to another level for real. So yeah, his maturation, and again, with the supporting cast that he has with a bunch of guys that are either young guys or cast-offs, to be averaging 10 assists or damn near 10 assists right now is so impressive. Like, nobody expected, like, if I were to tell you that Malik Beasley is his second best scorer or Jay Navy's his second best scorer on a night-to-night basis, you would guess, okay, maybe he'll be around the 7 or 8. Nah, he has been unbelievably dissecting teams, taking double teams, triple teams, finding them on lobs, finding them on, open threes. Like, his maturation and his production improvement has just been so impressive. It shouldn't be a question. He definitely deserves to be an All-Star this year.
He does. And he kind of transitions into our next topic. And I know when I texted you to come on this week, I was like, are we going to talk about this? I was like, we're going to talk about this. So I do want to give credit my former employer, Woodward Sports. Give a shout out to my guy, Spencer. He said that Cade Cunningham is the best Piston since Isaiah Thomas. Eric, this is a lot to get into, lots to dissect, because I feel like we're going to have different opinions on this. But hearing this, what do you think of it? And is Spencer crazy?
Spencer's not crazy. He's not correct, but he's not crazy. Let me just start here. I don't like these discussions, and then when people frame it as, oh, it's so disrespectful. How could you make an argument like this? How could you disrespect Chauncey and Grant? And, bruh, if those guys heard the number 1 overall pick that had an undefeated high school team, carried a BS Oklahoma State team to the NCAA tournament, has played his behind off and got better every single year of his career, one of the best passers in basketball, one of the best scorers in basketball. If they heard that comparison, I don't think they would think it's disrespect. Let's just start there. I hate it's such and such and it's not close argument. Like, bro, knock it off. Like, it's a worthy discussion. I totally understand it. Now, do I think Cade is the most talented since Isaiah? I don't. I think Grant Hill gets wildly underrated and undersold for what he's done in his career for obvious reasons due to the injury, but Grant was sensational. I think to me, if we're going just off talent, it goes Isaiah, Grant, and I think Cade is right underneath. I truly believe that. I think Grant was a great playmaker. He had a lot of the explosiveness that we're starting to see from Cade now, where he's just dunking on everybody. Grant had that in his bag for a while as well. Really good defender, just a well-rounded all-around player that Grant Hill was. So I would personally go Grant at the number 2, but a big debate and argument that I had was he's not even better than Chauncey. I think that's wrong. I don't agree with that. I do think Cade is more talented than Chauncey Billups. I think there's some areas, I think like Chauncey's a better shooter. And kind of outside of that, I think there's some areas you can maybe pick around. But for me, I think Cade is better. I don't think Cade would be a detriment to the team if he went to the 04 Pistons and had to take on a smaller, Gary Payton, who was older in the finals. I think he'd get along just fine. And I think he'd find his way to get the other guys involved without overshadowing them. Just because Chauncey had a ring, that does not make him more talented. People get lost in what team success means. Team success means everybody is good, not just one dude. So when Chauncey's playing with Rip Hamilton, who was great, Tayshaun, who was great, Sheed, who's one of the OG stretch fours in NBA, you have one of the best defenders in NBA history. You have a Hall of Fame coach in Larry Brown, one of the deepest benches in NBA history. And be clear, I'm 34 years old. Nobody remembers the 04 Pistons as well as I do. I'm well qualified to talk and make this stamp. So, again, I love Chauncey more than anybody. He was fantastic. He was one of the OGs of the pull-up 3 in transition. I remember my high school coach used to hate that. But I don't think Cade Cunningham isn't as talented. He's a bigger player. They kind of play a bit of a similar style. They both were bruisers in terms of posting up. They're really good mid-range shooters. They were good defenders. I think Cade gives more versatility as a defender. Cade's obviously a better rebounder, and Cade commands attention that Chauncey never had to. Chauncey never got double and triple teamed the way Cade does. And, I mean, that's okay. That's not his fault. It's just based on how the roster was constructed. But when you look at me, it's a chip is not enough to say somebody is more talented. That doesn't necessarily mean they're more talented. It means the team around them is probably a little bit better. Cade has already eclipsed all of Chauncey's numbers in his 4th season, and that's okay. I think it's close to compare the two, but if I had to make a choice, I think Cade Cunningham is more talented than Chauncey Billups.
This is where I think conversations like this can go either side of the fence.
Yes.
I grew up on the Grant Hill era. I'm 32. I started watching basketball when I was 4. My first moment of Grant Hill was dunking on Alonzo Mourning. Okay.
Classic.
Grant Hill was just special. I think if you were to rank the best Pistons since Isaiah Thomas, if I had to put my list out, it's probably Isaiah, Grant, Ben Wallace, Cade, and Chauncey. And the reason why I would have Ben there is because the Pistons really traded for Ben. Like he was kind of around the league a lot. He went from Washington, then he went to Orlando. We kind of played with Monty Williams for a little bit, which is kind of funny. But when you talk about the best Pistons since Isaiah, like Grant got into the All-Star game as a rookie, and he set a record.
Yep.
Grant Hill won Rookie of the Year. Co-Rookie of the Year with Jason Kidd, but he still won Rookie of the Year. Grant Hill had the Pistons in the playoffs a lot. Cade hasn't done that yet. But if you look at the numbers, they're pretty identical. He puts up Grant Hill type of stats on a night-to-night basis this season. I think Cade will be in these conversations, Eric, but it's going to have to be, for me, do it for another 3 to 4 years, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, win a playoff series, and then you can revisit this conversation because I think it's really premature and early. But I think as a prospect, I've said this multiple times on this show, I think Cade Cunningham is the best prospect since Grant Hill. And that's how high I view Cade Cunningham. Mm-hmm. I think Cade has the possibility to, eclipse Grant Hill as the second best Piston right under Isaiah Thomas. But I think for right now, it's really, really early. And for Chauncey Billups, for what it's worth, I think the reason why he didn't get doubled is because you couldn't double that 014
No,
because you
not
would
at
pay
all.
for it if you wanted to double Chauncey. But
Absolutely.
Chauncey was in MVP conversations when he was here.
Mhm.
He was in some Defensive Player of the Year conversations as well. I don't want to, kind of belittle him in any way, shape, or form, but I mean, when you have these debates and these conversations, they can get really tough. They can get really dicey, but that's just my list. I've always respected what Ben Wallace did without really scoring the basketball, just being a defensive menace, defensive anchor out there for him to go into work. Squad for several years, winning multiple Defensive Player of the Years. I mean, Grant Hill, I mean, people were calling him the next Michael Jordan.
Yep.
Like if he doesn't get injured, who really knows what happens? Maybe he has a couple of chips. I don't know if it would be of Detroit, but hey, you never really know. But I don't think Spencer is too crazy, but I think it's too early for us to say he's already better than Grant. I
Mhm.
think he has the possibility. If he keeps putting up these numbers that he's doing this season for the next 3-4 years, win some playoff series. That's just my take on it.
For me, I have a hard time. So when we're talking about talent alone, I don't love using winning as the forefront of that argument. I understand why it's necessary because we're splitting hairs and we're talking about greatness. So these are the kind of discussions that are needed. But for me, when it's just about talent alone, that's where I think it's acceptable to maybe look a little early to say, okay, this game or his production, it shows why he is who he is. And again, Cade is a guy that's a 3-level scorer, one of the best passers in basketball. He exceeds as a rebounder. He's a 6'7" point guard, and he gives you versatility that you want in a modern day NBA team. Like, I think that is just rare, and I think that speaks to talent. Winning, I think, can come in so many different ways from so many different other players in ways that it doesn't necessarily, to me, this is just how I see it. It doesn't necessarily put talent in its proper perspective to me when I'm looking at it, because there are nights where, yeah, there was like Chauncey. I remember the MVP discussions he had because he did an extremely good job of taking care of the basketball. I remember his assist to turnover ratio was just ridiculously out of the world for what he was doing. And I loved watching him play when he was leading that team. But in terms of just talent alone, like Cade, again, as a number 1 overall pick, he was the first of that class for a reason. He's being compared in other, like all these kind of names for a reason. The numbers he's putting up and like the reliability that he has on this team is because of his talent. I see the comments. I understand y'all pushing the chip argument, and I understand that. If you want to use it, use it. I'm not even going to argue with you. Like, again, I just don't like, it's not even close because he got it. Like, that's just ridiculous. Like, he's a dog. He's in his 4th year putting up unbelievable numbers that a lot of people didn't even expect. So to see his production be at this point of his career, we talked about, how productive and how great Grant was early in his career as well. That can't be slept on. I will never downplay Grant Hill and his greatness. He is fantastic. He may even have an argument as number 1. I get Isaiah, but he has an argument in my mind. But I don't think it's, and I actually kind of like that you put Ben in the discussion too, because I also look at Ben. I call him the greatest defender of all time. I truly believe that. I've never seen a guy control the paint the way he did, winning Defensive Player of the Year 4 different times. And you just saw the difference it made when he wasn't on that team, when he moved over to Chicago away from the Pistons. So I'm okay with Ben being in that discussion. I saw someone mention Jerry Stackhouse. Like, there's a lot of players that shared a lot of extreme level talent for this Pistons team, and Cade Cunningham already belongs in those discussions. I don't think it's crazy. Whatever way you decide where you decide what is who, I'm okay with it. I just don't think it's crazy or extreme to pick one side or the other. Like, I just think that's too much. It's not crazy.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think it really depends where you want to pick your argument, like what point you're trying to make. And the way I look at it is I think winning matters.
Of course.
I could see why people use the ring argument. No shot at Cade, but I mean, he hasn't had the best teammates around him. He's had rosters that don't make sense. I think eventually Cade will be in these conversations. Like we could probably have this conversation again in a couple of years, and my opinion could completely change if Cade wins a playoff series. I think that would hold so much weight in the Detroit Pistons community, the way we talk about Cade Cunningham as being a Pistons great. I really do, because at the end of the day, all fans care about is winning. They don't care about potential. They don't care about, all-star games. They want to see their team win. And right now, Cade has not done a whole lot of winning in his 4 years with the Detroit Pistons. Not really his fault. That was kind of like a previous regime and their obsession with reclamation projects, centers, and, whiffing on bad draft picks at the end of the day. It's not really Cade's fault. But I think once he starts winning more basketball games, then these conversations and these debates we have, they're going to get way more entertaining, I think.
And that's why I'm happy Spencer used the word he used, because he didn't just say on a blank slate, Cade is better than Isaiah or he's better than Grant. He said he's more talented. So when people say like who's better, you're taking talent and resume, and that's fair. I understand that. Spencer used the specific word of talent, and that is where I don't think resume has to be the number one view of a debate or an argument like this, because you're right. His roster could change, and a lot of arguments that people use are the times that they play in. The 04 days versus what they play in right now are, night and day. Even though I think, honestly, either player could have, I don't think it would have been a much difference if Cade was on the 04 Pistons. I also think Chauncey can succeed in today's NBA right now as well. I absolutely believe that. But again, in terms of talent alone, I don't think it's crazy to put Cade up in that discussion in the argument, because, again, Chauncey's production and his greatness, it wasn't over a 15-year span with the Pistons. He wasn't always a Hall of Fame level talent. Like when he was with the Celtics and when he was with the Nuggets, and he was pretty good with Minnesota, but before he got to the Pistons, he was still trying to find his way. He was still trying to find that right fitting piece of a franchise to be on, and he found it with the Pistons. Cade doesn't really have much of that choice right now because obviously where he was drafted to. But again, in terms of just sheer talent, I think the numbers and the production speak for themselves. The fact that Cade is able to put up the numbers that he's putting up right now, that speaks to his talent, not his career resume. If we're stacking career resume, it's not close. It's not close. Like Chauncey's a finals MVP. That's going to give him leverage no matter what. And I'm okay with that. But in sheer talent alone, I think Cade has a stronger argument than people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, I do too. We have a friend of the show, friend of that we share, Sean Murphy, actually watching us live right now. Shout out to Sean. And he has a really great comment, and I agree with him. He's like, my thing is, can we let Cade finish his third full season playing first before we start having the Isaiah Thomas conversation? It just dismisses the significant history of this franchise too quickly. And I tend to agree with Sean. I think when we get into these conversations and GOAT debates, it's kind of first take-ish. In a sense, but I do agree with him. I think Cade has all the makings to be an all-time great. I think he has the possibility to, be a first-team All-NBA. I think he has the possibility and the potential to be in MVP conversations. I mean, you see the role players right now. Like, I love Malik Beasley. He's an elite role player. Tim Hardaway Jr. Tobias Harris really hasn't done too much this season, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you put just competent role players around him, he's having a great season. Put a star next to him. Who really knows? I like Cade. Isaiah Thomas, Pistons GOAT. The Pistons GOAT. Grant Hill was my favorite growing up. Grant Hill's the reason why I'm a Detroit Piston fan still to this day. But I'm with Sean. Was kind of pump the brakes a little bit in terms of who's better, because I think you can get into really toxic conversations and people get in their feelings sometimes when you get into these arguments.
For sure. It's, I definitely don't want to be a Stephen A type of discussion, but these are the fun conversations too, I believe, sometimes, because it shows that you got something right. Like, we're not sitting here wondering, like, we're not having a Killian Hayes type discussion with Cade Cunningham. He's the guy. You won on a pick. You didn't screw up like Stanley Johnson. You didn't screw up a Luke Kennard. This is a pick that's working out and a guy that you can build around. So, yeah, it could definitely be premature, but I don't think it's a disrespect or a disservice to the guys who played before him. I don't think it's a disrespect to the other guys because, again, people go, it's not close. How could you? It's because he's putting up great numbers. The team is winning. He's a number 1 overall pick. Like, all of that matters in terms of talent. Where his resume goes from here, that's to be seen. We'll see what, happens from here on out. But in terms of his talent, I think he's checked all the boxes you could ask for. Like, there's some weaknesses to his game, but he's shown areas in games and stretches that he can still do that. His shooting is getting better. His defense, he's shown that he can be a reliable on-ball defender. Again, one of the best passers in basketball, great rebounder. It's not a lot of holes right now in Cade's game where it's holding the team back. So, Again, I understand it's premature a little bit, but it also could be viewed as fun if you look at it in its proper perspective.
Yeah, I saw Spencer getting heat for it, and I was like, that's Grant Hill slander. I'm not going to tolerate it. Like, come on, Spence. I know you're old enough to know who Grant Hill is. Like, come on, man. I love him, but the fact that we're talking about it on the podcast, this kind of tells you, because I saw multiple people talking about it. Even saw like beat reporters like retweeting it, like, what do you guys think? I don't remember. It's just like, wow, that's where we're at.
Oh yeah, Spence dropped the bomb with that one. Way to go, Spence.
Honestly. So we have one more topic of the podcast, and I think this is going to be another, fun debated topic. So obviously the Detroit Pistons are winning this year. We know that. Are you concerned with them possibly winning so many games that they surrender their draft pick this season to the Minnesota Timberwolves?
No, I'm not. The Pistons are at a position now, and again, we don't know where the rest of the season is going to go, but let's assume that they continue on this pace. They're on pace to win over 30 games right now. We'll see what happens, but right now they're on a very steady pace. I don't care about the pick. I don't. I think it's not going to be valuable enough to a point where the Pistons have been over the past several seasons worried about starting and needing their draft picks to be the guys that carry them forward. This is now the first time, even before last season, because the Stars started for a little bit, but Ron Holland is coming off the bench, but nobody is looking at the Pistons' struggles when they lose as, God, why did Ron play so poor? Like, it doesn't matter. He's not supposed to be the guy right now. The guys that you need to be who they're supposed to be are playing up to that potential right now. Cade is doing his job. Jaden Ivey's doing his job. Malik Beasley's doing his job. Tim Hardaway has had some games here or there where he's played really well, and they've gotten some good production performances from guys like Fontecchio off the bench. They've been able to find, good performances from Ron Holland. Asar is fitting in really nice on offense and defense. That dunk that he pulled off against the Nuggets was super awesome. I loved seeing him just put him on a poster. But I don't care about the pick right now. I feel like they needed to worry about finding sustainable pieces that will be here and help complement the guys that can contribute right away. If you bring in a guy right now that's a rookie, again, depending on where that pick is anyway, like if they're kind of in the middle of the pack and they lose that pick off to Minnesota, like who's to say that that guy's going to be an immediate starter in this moment anyway? Now, granted, they do have probably some openings considering how their forwards are playing right now, considering how consistent Tim Hardaway and Tobias have been. But as of right now, I don't want the Pistons leaning on more rookies to push them over the edge for their development. Like if they, finesse a trade or work something out in free agency, I think that's a little bit more important than knocking on another draft pick right now. Like, I just think now that you finally open the door of winning, you see other teams coming down in the East. So considering that, you don't need to be playing the long game of, okay, let's develop this talent and let's hopefully by the time game 30 gets around, they'll click in. Like, I don't want them to have to find that right now. I personally don't care about the pick. I know others do. I understand why. But for me personally, I don't think that should be their priority or their concern right now.
Yeah, so this has been a topic, I think, for the last couple of weeks that a lot of fans keep bringing up. If you look right now on Tankathon, their pick is sitting at 10. And they would lose the pick once it hits the, I think, 13th pick because it's top 13 protected. Here's my thing, Eric. I don't give a shit. Like, if they're winning basketball games.
Yes.
I'm not really concerned about a draft pick in the late lottery. Like, if we had a chance to land a Cooper Flag or an Ace Bailey or someone like that, maybe I'd be up here and say, I'm like, maybe they should just kind of sell off on the season and,
right,
try their luck. But we've done that the past 3 years, and we've got 5th straight years. Don't really know if the NBA is really going to give the Detroit Pistons another first overall draft pick for quite some time. I just don't. I don't think so, because before that it was like 50 years. The last one, I can't even remember who the last draft pick was. I know it was in the 70s, but I think it was like Bob Lanier or something like that. But my thing is this: like, they're winning basketball games. I think Trajan Langdon's going to have to make a decision, though, man. Like, they're getting closer and closer to possibly losing that pick. Okay, we're back.
There you go.
Apologize. Yeah, the internet.
I don't know if that was me or you, so I just waited. I'm like, oh God, here I go again.
No, I have like weak internet signals right now. I don't know what it is, but I was just saying, like, I think Trajan is going to have to make a decision with this roster and what to do with the trade deadline, because you never really know what's going to, happen. Each game they win, that pick's going to eventually go to Minnesota. I'm to the point where it's like, I'd rather them try to compete and make a play-in or get a playoff spot, because it's good experience. Another 18, 19-year-old kid, another kid you have to develop. Like, how many kids can you develop at once? Exactly. I think JB wants to get to the point where they're competing for playoff spots. Yep. They're playing meaningful games in March, April. I think most Pistons fans can agree with me. I can't get into hyping up a G League guy getting a call up on this team, because I like, no disrespect to G League guys or anything like that, but it's like, last year we had nothing but like G League guys on this roster getting significant minutes because we were trying to tank.
Right.
I'm to the point where Cade's playing well, Ivy's playing well, Beasley's playing out of his damn mind. Like, I want to see these guys get back into the playoffs, possibly win a playoff series. You haven't won a playoff series since 2008, since the Bush administration. Like, come on. Like, I'm to the point where, like, I want to see this basketball team win games. I could give a shit what happens to a pick in the late lottery. Like, just give it to Minnesota. Then we get our first round picks back, and we could possibly trade them for that superstar that all these fans always talk about, because you don't have to wait to trade your first round draft picks until draft night.
Right, because then you're still delaying what the ultimate hope is. Like you said, if winning is the hope, then it doesn't matter who you're drafting next season. Like, we don't even have to be in that discussion at this point anymore. If anybody is watching the Detroit Pistons play right now, seeing where the Eastern Conference layout is, and the thing on the top of your mind is what draft pick you're going to get, you're paying attention to the wrong thing right now. Like, these guys are doing what you're asking them to do. You're finding guys show that they can be sustainable, that they're not washouts, that they're not, they're still trying to figure out if, like, how many times do we say, if such and such can just put a shot together here, or if they can maybe with an offensive move here. Like, you don't have to worry about that for Cade and Jaden Ivey. They're doing that right now. And those are guys you drafted earlier. Now they're getting substantial time together. You have a coach that cares about developing them. And he came into the season saying the right thing, him and Trajan saying, we don't want to skip steps of development. I totally understand that. But next year, you should not be saying the exact same thing. If you are scurrying around the playing area right now, and if they get it, you shouldn't be talking about development. You should be talking about how we can make the next step in the playoffs, not play in playoffs. Like, you should be thinking about what it's going to take to get to that point. Trajan's going to have to be looking at roster building in a totally different aspect. Like, I think free agency, the trade deadline, those are way more important than your draft selection for next season. That does not matter right now at all. You need to be looking at veteran guys that can make the difference, because again, if guys like Malik Beasley can make this much of a difference, what would it mean if you could find a guy like Cam Johnson to bring over to this team? What would it mean to have, this is just my hope, I don't think he's going to get moved to Detroit, but if Sacramento is still in sell mode and Keegan Murray makes his way over here, how much of a difference would that make over the next 19-year-old that's going to take a few years to find his way, if he's even still on the team? You're doing that with Ron Holland right now. You're doing that with Asar right now, who I don't think is untouchable. We'll talk about that another time. But the point is, I think the Pistons have to be focused on what's most important right now. That's winning. It's not player development right now, because the players are developing. That's happening. They're finding their roles. They're finding what works for them, even if it's not the franchise guys that we've been talking about. Like, outside of Duren, a lot of other guys are kind of filling in to what their potential is or what the team needs them to be. So, no, I think the pick is completely irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, same here. I see so many Pistons fans saying, like, just sell Beasley off, just sell Hardaway off, and sell Tobias off, and just, give yourself a chance at Cooper Flagg. Give yourself a chance at Ace Bailey.
No.
I'm like, you guys, how many times have we had these conversations these past 4 years? It's getting to the point now where, like, you're going to start making winning decisions. Like, the conversations are going to get really tough. And I'm sure a lot of Pistons fans are going to have a lot of different opinions, but Pistons keep winning like this. Trajan's going to have a decision to make of what type of move to make, because he's going to lose that draft pick if they keep winning basketball games. And I'm hoping we do lose the draft pick this year, because I want to see progress, and I just want to see this basketball team win. I don't want to come up here in the summer and tell you about the 13th best prospect in a loaded draft class. It's very top heavy. Like, I just don't want to do that.
Exactly. Like, again, like I said earlier, it's not like the Pistons are just beating up on bad teams that, can't figure out what their next step is. They're not just beating up on the bottom feeders. You just saw them on the road put the Phoenix Suns on notice. You just saw LeBron in a primetime game get outed and get beat by a better team. Like, you just saw that. If they're able to compete, even the teams that they're not beating or winning against, like, they were competitive against the Celtics early to start the season. They were a couple possessions away from beating the Pacers. Like, they have the ability to compete with these teams already. Adding another 19-year-old at the 13th or 14th pick is not going to do anything for you. Or under that, it's not going to do anything for those hopes. Like, we keep kicking the can down the road. We said we don't want to do that no more with Troy Weaver. If that's the case, you got to get this mindset of, oh, what's this next asset going to look like? Who cares? Focus on winning. You're doing that right now with some veterans who, again, they're not the best fits, maybe not the best players, but you're seeing what the difference is when you have them on the rotation. They're not making those defensive lapses mistakes. Like, granted, those mistakes for those rookies, those are going to happen on a repeated basis, and you don't want to have to keep waiting on them to figure out, oh, I got to rotate here, or I got to be here for this, or I got to defend without fouling like this. Beasley and them already understand that. Like, I don't mind Tim Hardaway Jr. because, granted, he's been inconsistent, but the spacing he brings, his IQ of the game, his IQ on how to help these young guys out, like, again, it's not even just about, like, how many points they can score. Like their ability to rotate and get open shots and, find ways to get open for Cade and Ivy, that's so valuable. And these young guys that are being drafted as rookies, they don't have that in their mind right now. So that should not be the immediate thought for this team right now. The Pistons are winning. They're winning enough to a point where the draft should not be what you're focused on right now. It should be the trade deadline and who they can beat. They got, I think, the next 8 of their next 10, I think, are at home. Like, they could possibly be above 500 before that home stretch is over. So it's a lot of other things to be worried about except the draft. Like, that does not matter at all right now.
Yeah, miss me with that. Like I laughed. I got a comment the other day on a final score graphic I posted, and it was like, we're ruining our chances at Cooper Flag. I'm like, brother, like if that's what you're focused on, like I don't even know why you're a fan. Like,
Please.
why would you want to watch a team just lose on purpose? Like, it's just you went through a 28 game losing streak. Like, you want to do more losing? I don't get that. But I'm just to the point where like I want us to win so many games where we do lose our pick. So in the future, if we do want to make a trade, we can use it first. Won't be heavily protected anymore.
Exactly.
But that's just my stance on it. I did want to talk to you about it because I feel like so many Pistons fans are just so on the fence of what they want to do with this team. You know, they're 14-18 through the first 30 or so games. They're on pace to win like 37 games, which I think would be a huge step in the right direction. You're doubling your win total, like JB Bickerstaff, in my opinion. If this team has over 35 wins, should be in Coach of the Year conversations, in my personal opinion.
No question.
Shouldn't even be a debate. Should be a top 3 Coach of the Year candidate. But I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself. There are a couple of questions from the viewers. If you do have maybe like 5-10 more minutes at the end of it. Okay.
Sure.
Just want to. This is a super chat from Jay Hart. You guys do not have to do super chats if you want a question answered. I appreciate it, but you guys don't have to do that. But shout out to Jay Hart. He wants to talk about our bench unit is far better than last season. I believe they're ranked a top 10 bench or at least top 15. I would agree. I think this bench is so much better, and it's because of Malik Beasley. Like Malik Beasley makes that bench like 6th man of the year. I'm stamping it. 6th man of the year, Malik Beasley.
I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. And on top of that, they're playing in a staggered rotation where the starting guards are playing with them. So it's not just, Marcus Sasser alone and then the rest of the bench. Like that bench rotation with Asar, with Beasley, with Ron Holland, they get to play next to Cade, who's making their life a little bit easier, where they get to play defense, run in transition, and then get easy production off of that. Or, Cade gets double teamed, and then Paul Reed's got an open 15-footer that he can knock down with ease. Like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. You're seeing what it takes and what it would mean to have your bench playing in the right system with a coach that understands that. So, yeah, I love what I'm seeing from the bench and how they've been complimentary to the starters so far.
Yeah, same here. We'll do one more question, and I saw you on Twitter getting into conversations with people, and I'm sure I don't know if Ryan follows you, but maybe this is a question from your Twitter feed. And he says, question, in these dream trades, is Ron and Asar untouchables to you guys as they have untapped potential? Or are we going to have to give up one being a scoring at the 3, such as a necessity now?
No, they're not untouchable. They haven't done anything to be untouchable at this point. They're great talents right now. They have great spirit for the Detroit Pistons. They, play that Detroit Piston brand of basketball that coaches and GMs talk about all the time. But no, what have they done to show that they're untouchable? Even I know some media guys who are saying it too. Like, y'all got to relax. Like, Asar is a very talented player. I like some of the things that he brings to this team. His passing is getting better. His handle is getting a lot stronger than it was last season. And granted, most importantly than anything, his health seems to be in the right place now. We weren't even certain of when we were going to see him this season based on the blood clot issue he had. So, no, I don't think he's done anything to be untouchable. I don't honestly even think he should be starting right now. I think he's in a fine position coming off the bench because for 2 reasons. For one, if you take Tim Hardaway Jr., let's say you put Asar in for him and Tim comes off the bench, it seems kind of repetitive to bring Hardaway and Beasley off the bench when they're kind of doing the same thing. Also, it means that you have to give more shots to either Asar, who's not a proven shooter yet, or Tobias Harris, who's been terrible so far. Do you really want that? No, you don't. So you'll roll the dice with Tim Hardaway Jr. for right now. I don't think they're untouchable. I don't think they need to be, promoted in their roles right now. Let them keep progressing at their slow rate. Let the team keep winning. Let the vets hopefully figure out their streakiness. but there's no need to rush or deem these young guys as something that they're not right now. That's no shade to them. That's no disrespect. I love what they bring to this team. I love the chemistry that they have with the guys. But no, hell no. They're not untouchable right now. No.
Yeah, I don't think anyone on this roster is untouchable. Everyone has a price. I know for a fact that the Hawks made a trade package for Cade Cunningham last year. Straight up. Pistons didn't even entertain it. Like, no one on this roster is untouchable. I love Ron. I love Asar. But to answer your question, Ryan, they do have untapped potential. You're 100% right. Are we going to have to give up on one? It depends how they develop, and it depends how the team progresses. If the team is progressing where they're at, we'll just say like the pace of this year. They're winning 37 games, and Ron Holland, I think, is starting to figure it out. He's had a stretch of games where he's shooting the ball better from the outside, attacking the basket. I think Ron Holland, to me, is a little bit closer to developing into a two-way player than Asar is currently right now. I still think Asar has a lot of things that you can't teach, his speed, his athleticism. But I think right now his handle isn't the tightest. He does need to work on that. His jump shot is reworked. It looks good. But I think when you talk about Ron and Asar, I think Ron's just a little bit a step ahead in terms of being able to shoot the basketball. And defensively, you love what you see out of Ron. But I will say this. I think Ron Holland is more of a 2-3. And Asar is more of a 3-4, which if that's your tandem long term of having, guys that they may not be on the talent level as a Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, but they're good matchups against them come playoff time, that's exactly what you want. Right. And I think both of those guys have all the potential in the world to become two-way players. If they both become two-way players, man, that's scary. That's a scary tandem of just having those switchable wings, especially when you're going to be playing teams like the Knicks, like the Celtics, teams that are very wing heavy. I don't think they're untouchable. I think everyone has a price. But in terms of them, developing and hitting their ceiling, I think what I'm seeing right now from Ron Holland, I think he's closer to being a two-way player than Asar is currently as we're recording this, video in 2024. Right. Still really early. Like Asar could just have a stretch of games where he looks like he's a little bit closer. But as of right now, Ron Holland seems like the game's slowing down for him a little bit.
Yeah, and again, this is all new for them right now. Even the guys that have been in the league for 2-3 years, this is their first time playing for JB Bickerstaff. Like there are a lot of things that they're kind of warming up to. This whole franchise in general is just kind of stepping into new roles, like from Trajan down. Like everybody is kind of setting in and, figuring out, at least for the untapped potential, where things fit and how they, work with this team. So, yeah, again, their fit right now makes sense in terms of what they're being asked to do, which isn't a lot. Just go in there, bring some energy, don't mess up, don't try to do too much. And I think that they've been doing that right now. Like, I don't think it's a rush to look at them as, all right, well, we got to figure out what we have with them now. We have to see if they can play 30 minutes again. No, you don't. Nobody's injured right now. Like, they're not on a down spiral in terms of winning and losing. I actually kind of liked that they got the rotation they got, or the burn they got against the Nuggets, where they played basically the majority of the second half. I didn't mind that at all because it seemed like the starters were just a little bit off. And it's okay to kind of give some of these guys a little bit of that push, especially considering that they were bringing the score within single digits a couple times. So like there are some areas where you can kind of put them on the, the bright lights to see what they do, but to stamp them as untouchable this early, or to think that, they need to be rushed into an area that they're not ready for. Like, I think that's where people are getting a little bit too ahead of themselves. Like, let them take their time. Let them figure things out. Let them find out what they're good at. Fred Vincent is doing wonders for them right now. It's coming slow, but it is coming. Let's let it work at its own pace. It's no need to rush right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when I see people have the untouchable conversation, Kevin Durant got traded. Everyone has a price.
Right. Thank you.
Everyone has a price. Like, at the end of the day, I think as fans, we hate to see players that we invest so much time get traded because we get upset. Like, to this day, Eric, I'm still upset over the Chauncey Billups trade. To this day.
Yeah.
I still and they're still selling Allen Iverson jerseys at LCA. I saw that today. I was sick. Too. I was sick to my stomach. And it's a red alternative at that, which is a 6 jersey. And I had to see, I was like, wow, really, LCA? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Like, come on, man. But appreciate about 600 people in here right now. That's amazing. It on a Sunday night, almost 9 o'clock at night. I do want to give you the floor though to plug and promote what you're working on over at Clutch Points and your YouTube channel, by the way.
Appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure. Piston community, I love you guys more than you know. It really means a lot being here with y'all. Follow me on my social media, everything at I am Eric Vincent, like you see on the screen. I got a piece for Clutch Points coming up, kind of rehashing what we learned over the Pistons West Coast road trip. It should be published by tomorrow. I'm really excited to get that out there. If you guys want to check it out at clutchpoints.com, it'll be on all my socials as well. And I got my own channel as well, as Anthony just mentioned, Top Title Entertainment. Plenty of Piston reviews on there, a lot of clips, a lot of reels, kind of getting outside of basketball as well, a little bit of Lions talk. I'm a big WWE fan, so if you're a wrestling fan like I am, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Even some hip-hop and music conversation on there as well. Make sure you subscribe and tap in Top Title Entertainment. I would really appreciate it. And, yeah, I love this, man. I really appreciate y'all being here supporting. It really means a lot.
I appreciate you coming on. Like, I have just so many recurring guests on here, and you're probably one of my favorite recurring guests that I have on. I feel like we talk like once a month. It's just fun to talk with you. I do have your Twitter in the description below if you're watching live on YouTube, so people can follow you on Twitter. And I also have your YouTube linked in the description below for people that are watching right now. They can just click the link and they can follow your Twitter and follow your YouTube and see what you're working on. Like, you're one of the better beat reporters that we have in the city, and I think more people should be tapped in with like what you're writing, what you're doing, what you're covering. Like, I saw that the Pistons used your quote with the JB question that you asked. Like, that was so cool to see that, and just to see all the interview clips that you have with Cade just blow up. It's just so awesome to see, man.
It means a lot, for real, man. I've worked my behind off for these kind of moments. I really want to, again, I don't think Detroit sports gets the rap that it deserves. I really want to make sure that we're represented in the right light, with the channel as great as that you have and fans dedicated as you have on this channel. Like you see in the poster, man, it's Detroit all day. I'd like to represent the best I can. If you guys support me, I really appreciate it. It really does mean a lot. Follow me on my socials, tap into my work. Even if I'm bad at it, if I say something wrong, I'm not above being, coached and, corrected. If you think I'm something crazy, we'll talk about it. We'll deal with it. I respect the passion. I respect the support. It really does mean the world to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, just don't come at Eric with any Drake takes, because I'll rip your ass apart.
Oh yeah, I'm going crazy. Anybody I see an owl 6 this, I'm going crazy. And then we not friends. Then it's all beef. That's what you need to know.
No, I got no Aubrey Angels over here. It's all Kendrick.
That's right. All for the go. Well, that's right.
We'll see you guys later next week. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and go Lions. Please beat the 49ers. Please. Shout out.